Tonight, when the sun goes down, you're going to flip a switch. Light will flood the room. You won't think twice about it. But for 99.9% of human history, that switch didn't exist. When the sun set, the world simply disappeared. And somewhere deep in your brain, a part of you still remembers that. But the real answer to why you fear the dark is far stranger than it's just instinct. Think about the last time you walked through your own house at night. The lights were off. You knew exactly where the couch was, where the stairs were, where the door was. Nothing had changed since the afternoon. And yet your heart moved a little faster. Your steps got a little slower. Why does a space you know perfectly well suddenly feel unfamiliar the moment the lights go out? The answer isn't really about darkness at all. It's about information. Your eyes evolved to gather roughly 90% of the data your brain uses to understand the world. Take that away, and your brain doesn't calmly accept the silence. It panics quietly, filling the gaps with guesses. And your ancestors' guesses were rarely wrong for very long. For millions of years, your ancestors lived on the savannas and forest edges of Africa without fire, without walls, without any real defense once the sun disappeared. Predators like leopards and hyenas are most active at night. Human night vision, by comparison, is remarkably poor. You lack the reflective layer behind a retina, called a tapetum lucidum, that lets cats and dogs see in near total blackness. You gave that up somewhere in your evolutionary past in exchange for sharper color vision during the day. It was a fair trade in daylight. At night, it left you nearly blind. So what did that mean practically for a small group of hominins on the African plains 3 million years ago? It meant the night was the most dangerous stretch of every single day. Not a metaphor. A statistic. Paleoanthropologists studying predator remains alongside early hominin fossils have found tooth marks on bones consistent with big cats hunting after dark, when early humans had almost no way to see them coming. Every sunset was quite literally a countdown. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham at Harvard has spent decades studying how early humans survived this exact vulnerability. His research points to one invention as the turning point: fire. Wrangham argues that controlled fire didn't just provide warmth. It extended the day. It let your ancestors see threats coming. It pushed predators back from the campsite. And it gave your ancestors something they'd never had before: a small, glowing island of safety inside the enormous dark. But here's the twist. Fire didn't erase the fear of darkness. It sharpened it. Because now there was a boundary. A clear, visible line between the safe circle of light and the unknown beyond it. And every human who wandered past that line, even by a few feet, was stepping back into the version of the world where their ancestors had died for millions of years. That boundary never really left you. It just moved. It's the reason a lit room feels like an island, and an unlit hallway feels like a threshold. It's the reason children instinctively want a nightlight, not because they've been taught to be afraid, but because the edge of visible light still registers, somewhere ancient in the brain, as the edge of safety. Here's a question worth sitting with. If fear of the dark were purely learned, purely cultural, why would it show up almost identically in toddlers who've never been told a single scary story? Studies on childhood fears consistently find that darkness ranked among the most common fears in early development, emerging well before children can articulate a reason for it. That's not a coincidence. That's a signature. A signature of something built and not taught. This is where the smoke detector principle comes in. Randolph Ness, an evolutionary psychiatrist at the University of Michigan, has spent his career studying why humans seem to overreact to danger far more often than the danger materializes. His argument is elegantly simple. A smoke detector that only ever goes off during real fires is a badly designed smoke detector. Because by the time smoke is thick enough to guarantee a real fire, it might already be too late. A well-designed smoke detector goes off constantly. It errs on the side of false alarms because a false alarm costs you a moment of annoyance, while a missed real fire costs you your life. Your fear of the dark works the exact same way. It doesn't need to be right very often. It only needs to be right sometimes, at exactly the right moment, for your ancestors to survive long enough to pass that fear down to you. Which means the eerie feeling you get in an unlit room isn't a malfunction. It's a smoke detector still wired, still working, mostly going off for nothing. Mostly. Consider, too, how differently this fear appears across the world, and yet how similar its shape stays. Cultures separated by oceans, with no contact for thousands of years, independently develop stories about creatures that come out only at night. Spirits that wait by the tree lean. Beings that can't be seen directly, only sensed. Why would isolated societies, with no shared language and no shared myths, keep inventing the same basic warning? Because they weren't really inventing anything. They were describing the same ancient alarm, using whatever cultural language was available to them at the time. The monster changes. The underlying warning doesn't. There's another layer here, one most people never stop to consider. It isn't just that darkness hides danger. It's that darkness erases your ability to plan. During the day, your ancestors could scan the horizon, track the movement of a herd, spot smoke from a rival group's fire, and adjust their next move accordingly. All of that vanished the moment the sun dropped. Decision-making, in the truest sense, became nearly impossible. You couldn't run a smart escape route through terrain you couldn't see. You couldn't judge distance, direction, or the size of whatever was moving nearby. Night didn't just increase danger. It removed your ability to respond to danger intelligently, which is arguably worse. A threat you can strategize against is frightening. A threat you can only wait for is something else entirely. That helplessness left a mark. Even now, in a fully modern world, one of the most commonly reported feelings during nighttime fear isn't just alertness. It's a specific kind of stillness, an urge to simply stop moving and listen rather than act. That's not passivity. That's an ancient strategy resurfacing. When you can't see, moving randomly is often more dangerous than staying still and gathering information first. Your ancestors who paused, listened, and waited before acting in total darkness were, on average, the ones who lived long enough to have children. The ones who moved first and thought later frequently didn't. Now, here's where the story gets stranger. Darkness didn't just shape how your ancestors feared. It shaped how they thought. Consider what happens to the human mind in prolonged darkness, isolation, or reduced sensory input. Archaeologist David Lewis Williams has spent decades studying the earliest cave art in Europe and southern Africa, painted deep inside chambers where no natural light ever reaches. His research suggests these weren't just early galleries. Many were likely created during altered states of consciousness, entered deliberately, in total blackness, hundreds of meters underground. In sensory deprivation, the human brain doesn't go quiet. It starts generating its own imagery, shapes, figures, patterns that feel external even though they're entirely internal. Your ancestors may have understood something intuitively that neuroscience now confirms directly. Total darkness doesn't empty the mind. It floods it. Think about that the next time you close your eyes in bed and swear you see faint shapes drifting across the black. That's not the dark showing you something. That's your visual cortex, deprived of input, quietly inventing its own show. This is also, in part, why the dark feels different depending on your state of mind. A dark bedroom after a good day feels cozy. The same dark bedroom after a stressful day feels charged, almost watchful. Your brain isn't measuring photons. It's measuring vulnerability. And nothing makes you feel more vulnerable than being unconscious in the one stretch of time your ancestors were most likely to be killed. Which brings up sleep itself, arguably the strangest part of this entire story. Every night, you voluntarily lie down, close your eyes, and lose almost all awareness of your surroundings for roughly a third of your life. Sleep researcher Matthew Walker, at the University of California, Berkeley, has described sleep as one of evolution's greatest gambles. From a pure survival standpoint, lying immobile and unaware for 8 hours in an environment full of predators should have been selected against almost immediately. And yet it wasn't. Sleep persisted, which tells you it must offer something so essential that the enormous risk was worth it. Memory consolidation, cellular repair, emotional regulation, all of it happening while you're at your most exposed. Have you ever woken suddenly at 3 a.m. certain, for just a moment, that something was in the room with you? That's not a coincidence of timing either. Human sleep architecture dips into its lightest, most easily disturbed phase in the early hours of the morning, precisely when the surrounding world is at its darkest and quietest. Your body, without asking your permission, surfaces you toward wakefulness during exactly the window your ancestors were statistically most vulnerable. You're not imagining the timing. Your biology arranged it that way on purpose. So ask yourself, why do humans still, overwhelmingly, prefer to sleep indoors, behind locked doors, often with some form of light nearby. It's the same instinct that once drew your ancestors back toward the fire. A locked door is a modern cave mouth. A nightlight is a modern flame. You've replaced saber-toothed cats with the vague unease of an empty hallway, but the underlying architecture of the fear hasn't changed even slightly. Here's the counterintuitive twist most people never consider. Your fear of the dark isn't really about darkness. It's about uncertainty. Studies on anxiety and ambiguous threat consistently find that unclear, unresolved danger produces more sustained fear than clear, immediate danger. A snake in front of you triggers a sharp, short burst of fear, then resolution, one way or another. A dark room triggers something slower and more persistent because your brain can't resolve the threat. It can't confirm there's nothing there. And a threat your brain can't confirm is a threat your brain refuses to stop monitoring. This is why a horror movie rarely shows the monster clearly for long. The moment you see it fully, your brain files it, categorizes it, and starts to relax. It's the door that won't fully open, the shape at the edge of the frame, the sound with no clear source that keeps your nervous system locked in place. Filmmakers didn't invent this effect. They discovered it, sitting on top of a fear response that was already millions of years old. Now think about your own childhood bedroom again. The closet door left slightly ajar. The shadow cast by a coat on a hook that, for 1/2 second, looked like it moved. None of that was really about the object. It was about the fact that your brain couldn't fully resolve what it was looking at, and an unresolved shape, to a brain built by millions of years of nighttime predation, defaults to danger until proven otherwise. Notice, too, how your other senses sharpen the moment your eyes stop working. A floorboard creak that would vanish completely under daytime noise suddenly sounds enormous at midnight. Your hearing hasn't actually improved. Your attention has simply stopped competing with visual information and poured itself entirely into sound instead. This is why the countryside, genuinely one of the quietest environments on Earth, can somehow feel louder and more alive at night than a busy street does in daylight. Your brain isn't lying to you. It's just reallocating resources the way it was built to, the instant the lights go out. Here's the mirror moment. You live now in the safest environment your species has ever known. Streetlights, locks, phones with flashlights built directly into them. Statistically, walking down a dark street in most modern cities carries a small fraction of the risk your ancestors faced simply existing after sunset in the open savanna. And yet the fear hasn't updated. It can't. Evolution doesn't work on a software patch cycle. It works across hundreds of thousands of years, and streetlights have existed for less than 200 of them. You are, quite literally, running ancient code on a modern operating system. This is why so many adults, otherwise entirely rational, still feel a small flicker of unease turning off the basement light and walking up the stairs in the dark. It's why hotel rooms feel different at 3 a.m. than they do at 3 p.m., even though nothing in the room has actually changed. It's why campers, surrounded by nothing but trees, quiet, and stars, often report the night feeling alive in a way that daylight never does. Your brain isn't wrong to notice the difference. It's just measuring risk using a calculator built for a world that mostly no longer exists. There's a physical piece of this puzzle too, one that rarely gets mentioned. Your body's stress chemistry shifts measurably after dark. Cortisol, the hormone most associated with alertness and threat response, naturally follows a daily rhythm, and reduced light exposure interacts directly with that rhythm. Melatonin rises as light fades, preparing your body for rest, but the transition isn't always smooth. For a window of time, right as the light disappears, your nervous system sits in a strange overlap, part of it winding down for sleep, part of it still scanning for threats out of old habit. That overlap is precisely when many people report their sharpest, most irrational feeling spike of nighttime unease. It isn't irrational at all. It's two ancient systems briefly running at the same time, one telling you to rest, the other still checking the tree lean out of sheer evolutionary muscle memory. And maybe that's the real reason this fear has never fully gone away, no matter how safe your environment becomes. Fear like this wasn't designed to track your actual current risk. It was designed to track the risk your ancestors carried for millions of years and to keep tracking it long after the original danger faded, because a fear that switches off too easily is a fear that isn't doing its job. You are the end result of every ancestor whose alarm system never quite relaxed. The nervous ones survived. The calm ones, more often, did not. So the next time the fear creeps in, the tightening in your chest walking past an unlit window, the instinct to check a dark corner twice before relaxing, understand what you're actually feeling. You're not broken. You're not irrational. You're carrying forward the exact same alarm system that kept a small, slow, poorly armed primate alive long enough to become you. Every human who ever successfully avoided being eaten in the dark passed that fear down the line, generation after generation, until it reached you, fully intact, sitting quietly under the surface of an otherwise ordinary night. Even the language you use gives this away. You don't usually say a dark room feels unlit. You say it feels creepy or off or wrong, language that has nothing to do with photons and everything to do with threat. Compare that to how you talk about darkness you've chosen and controlled. A dimmed restaurant, a movie theater, a bedroom with the blinds drawn on a lazy afternoon. Those spaces don't trigger the same unease at all, because your brain has already filed them as safe, predictable, and bounded. The fear was never really about the absence of light. It's about the absence of certainty, and certainty is something your ancestors could only ever get from being able to see. Fire changed the boundary. Sleep forced the risk. Darkness emptied the senses and let the mind fill in the rest. And underneath all of it, one signal never stopped transmitting. Uncertainty is danger, and danger deserves attention, even now, even here, even in a bedroom with a working lock and a phone flashlight within arm's reach. Tonight, when you flip that switch and the room floods with light, notice what actually happens in your chest. That small release. That tiny, almost imperceptible sense of the world becoming legible again. That feeling is not a modern convenience. It's a very old relief, arriving instantly, the same relief your ancestors felt gathering closer to the fire 3 million years ago. And it means the dark was never really the thing you were afraid of. What you were afraid of was simply not being able to see what was coming.